84% of vegans and vegetarians end up going back to eating meat.
You've probably heard this statistic before. I've certainly used it before, but it's often misused, as it is in this Joe Rogan clip.
What do you got, Jamie?
It's very controversial research that came out, but it's a very repeated number of 84% of vegans and vegetarians end up going back to eating meat at some level.
Yeah, right before they die.
Folks, we're omnivores. We're
Yeah.
omnivores. We exist better. We are more healthy on an animal and vegetable diet.
What Joe is saying, his response to the statistic, is that eating meat is healthier than being vegetarian or vegan. Duh, of course they go back to eating meat. We're omnivores. Eating meat is healthier. So where does this stat come from? It comes from a nonprofit called Faunalytics. They do research to help advocates help animals more effectively. And the 84% figure specifically comes from one of their reports published back in 2014, study of current and former vegetarians and vegans. In brief, 11,399 Americans 17 and older were surveyed. It was an online survey about what they eat. And then based on those answers, they were grouped into one of 5 categories. You have never vegetarian or vegan, so omnivore, current vegan, current vegetarian, former vegan, and former vegetarian. And they did indeed find that 84% of vegans and vegetarians abandoned their diets. So going forward, I'm going to refer to vegetarians and vegans when I'm talking about both as veggies. So when I say former veggies, I'm talking about vegetarians and vegans together. Okay, so speaking of vegetarians and vegans, this stat is not just on vegans. Now, in the clip, they did quote that correctly.
84% of vegans and vegetarians end up going back to eating meat.
They did say vegetarians and vegans, but I've seen it elsewhere presented as though this study was just on vegans. No. Out of the 11,399 participants, 1,204 were vegetarian, that's 10.6%, and 183 were vegan, that's 1.6%. So about 6.5 times more vegetarians than vegans. Then when we narrow it down to former vegetarians and former vegans, we get 1,037 former vegetarians and 129 former vegans. About 8 times as many former vegetarians as former vegans. Point is, most of the data here is on vegetarians and omnivores, of course, not vegans, which makes sense. Veganism is a lot more restrictive. There are a lot more vegetarians than there are vegans, a lot more people willing to give up meat, not eggs and milk, cheese as well. So we are going to have more former vegetarians than former vegans. It is interesting that the vegans seem slightly less likely to abandon their diet, given the vegan diet is, again, more restrictive. You would maybe expect to see the opposite, lower retention among vegans than vegetarians. But Joe, or whoever cited the study in the podcast, they are right. The vast majority of veggies quit.
Folks, we're omnivores. We're
Yeah.
omnivores. We exist better. We are more healthy on an animal and vegetable diet.
Of course, veggies go back to eating meat. It's healthier to include meat in your diet, is basically what he's saying, with no pushback from the guy who cited the stat in the first place. But yeah, I mean, the Joe Rogan podcast isn't really known for pushback, so I guess that's not too surprising. But yeah, is this actually in the study? Does the study say people are going back to eating meat, other animal products, because of health? When we actually look at the study, we see lots of different reasons that former veggies give for going back to eating animal products, from I felt the important people in my life were unsupportive of my diet to I was a picky eater. Can relate. Faunalytics has listed the most common, the key difficulties from their analysis. I was not actively involved in a veggie group or organization. I disliked that my veggie diet made me stick out from the crowd. I did not see my veganism as part of my identity. I had insufficient interaction with other veggies. I began to feel it is too difficult to be pure with my vegination. I was bored with my food options. I was tempted by poultry. Was tempted by beef or pork, fish, seafood. In other words, the biggest issues here were social pressure and taste/cravings. Not health. Now, that's not to say health was not a factor. We can see here 27% said they always felt hungry. 17% said they were frequently fatigued or lightheaded. That is very concerning. Maybe not surprising, given 16% said they were low-fat or raw. Could be a connection there. Several were concerned about nutrient intake and the impact the diet, vegetarian or vegan, was having on their health. Now, it's not clear, does this mean they were actually having symptoms that they thought or suspected was connected to the diet, or were they just concerned because they read something about vegans can't get enough iron? It's not clear. Of note, Faunalytics did ask participants about various ailments, asked them if they experienced any of these while following the diet: depression, anxiety, digestive problems, food allergies, low cholesterol, eating disorder, thyroid problems, protein deficiency, B12, calcium, iron, iodine, vitamin A, vitamin D, zinc. 71 experienced none of the above. Health did not present a noticeable difficulty for study participants, with the exception of B12 monitoring. More important than monitoring, I think, is intake, and we can see here 26% of former and 16% of current veggies did not regularly supplement with B12 or eat foods fortified with B12. Again, this is from 2014, so hopefully things have improved in a decade, 11 years, and it is an easy fix. Just take your B12. The other health issues, lightheadedness, I was being silly. I don't know if it's really connected to low fat or raw. Most likely it's just calories, lack of calories, which of course are connected to eating low fat raw foods. When people go vegetarian or vegan, they might not account for the calorie loss when switching from beef to beans. And often people cut back on processed foods as well, which, as we know, offer a lot of calories. Protein could play a role, maybe, although given half of the former veggies were veggie for less than a year, 34% for 3 months or less, I don't think protein had anything to do with anything. Other than hunger, protein can help with satiation. A large number of people, a large percentage, did say they were hungry all the time. Again, this could just be calories, right? When you're switching to lots of plants, you're probably eating a lot more fiber than you're used to and feeling more full on less calories than you would normally eat in a meal. And again, given how short the span of vegetarian or veganism was for a lot of these people, it's not surprised that hunger and dizziness were the largest concern or experienced by the most people. By 3 months, you're probably going to figure out how to eat enough or just quit. Iron, they did ask about iron deficiency, and 11% said they had experienced that. Lightheadedness, iron deficiency can cause that as well. This is a concern for menstruating women in particular, vegan or not. Many of us struggle to get enough iron. These health issues basically come down to education, right? Educating new vegetarians and vegans to help them feel confident in their diet, teaching them about potential problems like calories and iron. Now, unfortunately, there's so much misinformation that we can't really do anything about, right? So someone might learn that, okay, this is how I get enough iron on a vegan diet, or vitamin A, right? Okay, I'm eating my carrots. And then they hear from some Weston Price keto person that no, actually, you can't get enough vitamin A from plants. Yeah. I also want to mention this caution, this note that's in the Faunalytics report about the possibility of former veggies exaggerating their difficulties as a way to justify eating meat again. They might feel really bad about that, but tell themselves and others that, oh, well, I was really sick, right? And on the flip side, current vegetarians and vegans could be maybe downplaying any difficulties they're having. Current vegetarians and vegans may have been more likely to minimize concerns as they are inconsistent with their present choices. To wrap this up, to imply health was not only a factor, but the factor, the reason so many vegans and vegetarians don't stay vegan or vegetarian is just wrong. In 2016, Faunalytics published this follow-up report using the same 2014 data. One thing they did was compare meat consumption among former vegetarians and vegans to the US population using a 200 participant representative sample. They found Americans ate 2.1 servings per day of meat per day, while the former vegetarians ate 1.13 servings per day. So that's almost a 50% reduction. The average former veggie may be appropriately thought of as a meat reducer or possibly even a semi-vegetarian. Can you imagine if every American reduced their meat consumption by 50%? Cutting animal-based foods in U.S. diet by half could prevent 1.6 billion tons of GHG emissions by 2030. Now, this was 5 years ago, so 2035. Also, this study does include other animal products, eggs and dairy. It's not just meat. It is possible the former veggies are making up for less meat by eating more dairy, more eggs. Unfortunately, Faunalytics only compared meat consumption, but we can see from the original report that the former veggies ate 0.9 servings of dairy and 0.4 servings of eggs per day. Your average American eats about 1.48 servings of dairy and 0.77 servings of eggs each day. So the veggies are getting about 1 serving, 1 cup of milk per day, a little less than half of an egg per day. The Americans are getting about 1.5 cups of milk or servings of dairy per day and about 3/4 of an egg. If we add that to the meat totals, we get 4.35 servings of animal products per day for the average American versus 2.43 servings for the former veggies. 56%. So again, about half. So yeah, clearly animal product consumption dropped across the board. And again, this could make such a huge difference for the world, whether you care about animal lives or not. So yeah, this study isn't really about health, and it's not just about the 84% figure either. It's also about this, which is really positive. Also, the percentage of former vegetarians and vegans who want to try again. They're not just full-on carnivore now. That's probably the exception. So as per usual, many non-vegans want veganism to be about health. They don't really want to talk about the ethical implications of eating animals and eggs and dairy. They would rather talk about how unhealthy vegans are. Even though it's pretty clear that health is not the biggest issue, it's social issues. It's also availability, cost when we're talking about like the plant foods people want to eat, like Beyond Burger. Obviously, beans and rice are very cheap, but that's not super appetizing to people. They want to be able to still have a burger and not a veggie burger. But by focusing on health, it becomes, oh, well, we don't have to listen to any of the arguments for veganism or vegetarianism because clearly the diets are unhealthy. We can't be healthy, vegan, or vegetarian, so we don't even need to talk about, please, we don't need to talk about how terribly pigs and chickens and cows are treated. Like, please, don't make me talk about that. Don't make me sound like a monster trying to defend that, is how I interpret these kind of responses. But anyway, I would love to know your thoughts on this. I know I don't respond to a whole lot of comments, but I do read a whole lot of comments. Please do like and subscribe, and thank you so much for the response. The last video, the protein video about that study, talking about lysine mostly, did really, really well. I don't know why. I talk about these sorts of things all the time. I talk about, studies on vegans and vegetarians all the time. I don't know why that one in particular did really well. I mean, the thumbnail is super cute. I did pay for that little bean. I searched like crying cartoon bean and I saw that one and was like, yes, I need it. Shit. Shutterstock, no. Maybe it's a little bean. That's what helped me get more views and so many subscribers. So many people subscribed off of that video. I love it. That makes me so happy. Anyway, thank you again. And of course, thank you so much to the people who support the channel, all of my members here on YouTube and my patrons at patreon.com/unnaturalvegan. I do post 2 exclusive videos a month for tier 2 members and patrons. I do a vlog and then I do a controversial topic, just whatever I want to talk about. Last month was the Amazon boycott. So yeah, stuff unrelated to veganism, environmentalism, stuff that I would post to the channel. Yeah, thanks again, guys. New video soon.
If you don't want to kill animals, please eat eggs, eat oysters, eat shrimp and lobsters. They're fucking heartless, soulless little monsters that live at the bottom of the ocean.
So if you don't want to kill animals, kill animals. This is a happy little thing. I was going to make its own video, but it's so short. I'll just tack it onto this one, I think. Asking Eric, I don't have the body, time, or energy to fight the veganism battle anymore, says 75-year-old. So this is one that I clicked on like, oh, this whole thing is gonna suck. Like the question is gonna suck, the advice is gonna suck, but I was pleasantly surprised. So basically, this 75-year-old, she says her daughter and her husband, they married 25 years ago, and they decided to go vegan and are still vegan. And during that time, the 2.5 decades, the mother has been accommodating them, like at Thanksgiving, no turkey, Christmas. And it's not just like turkey, it's also all of the cookies, all the baked stuff. It sounds like every single thing she makes is vegan, which is so nice. Sure, it was hard to ditch the turkey at Thanksgiving and the roast beef at Christmas, but we handled it. Instead, we experimented making unique ethnic dishes emphasizing real vegetables and unusual grains, even if it did take 3 times more effort and time and taxed stomachs not used to all the beans. What was more disappointing was not being able to use butter and eggs to make the traditional cakes and cookies that had been passed with pride through my mother's side of the family. I tried hard to make new plant-based desserts with substitute ingredients, but no matter what anybody claims, they just do not taste the same. Without these memorable recipes, our family gathers always feel lacking. Finally, she has a barbecue with her daughter, with the family, and she grilled some new fancy vegan burgers, as she says. Afterward, I became violently ill and only then discovered it contained a new synthetic ingredient that irritates digestive systems of people who have inflammatory conditions like mine. And so now she's done. She's not accommodating them anymore, and presumably is like, I don't know, not going to provide any vegan options? I don't know. So Eric is offering the advice, Reverend Eric Thomas. I've read a lot of advice columns, but not anything from him. Anyway, he says, I believe that you've made a good faith effort to honor your daughter's veganism, but I also believe that your resentment over this life choice is coloring your experience. You characterize this as a battle, but who is fighting? For instance, if you want the traditional cakes and cookies at a holiday, what's stopping you from making them for yourself and other non-vegan guests, while still making or assigning someone to make vegan alternatives? No, they will not taste the same. This is true of any recipe modification. If you need the originals at your holiday meals, you can still have them. I don't see demands from your daughter in your letter. Now, they might be there in reality, and if that's the case, then the situation is slightly different. But either way, ask yourself what's necessary for reasonable accommodations and what's too much for you. If you don't like vegan burgers, perhaps a burger-centric barbecue isn't the best option. For instance, there are so many vegan options for outdoor gatherings that can be made with items in your fridge and pantry right now. From pasta salads to veggie skewers to more adventurous options like pulled jackfruit with barbecue sauce and grilled portobello mushrooms. Is this man vegetarian or vegan? How do you know about jackfruit? Okay, Google AI says there isn't enough information to definitively say whether Reverend Eric Thomas is vegetarian. Point is, I love this response. This is the definition of being charitable. I think it would be so easy for anyone really to assume that the vegans in this situation, the daughter and her husband, are being demanding. And then to take the 75-year-old's side, the mother, saying, it's your house, make whatever you want, something like that. So I was just really pleasantly surprised to see him being so charitable and recognizing that she didn't say anything. She didn't say anything about demands. She didn't say anything about how her daughter acts at all, just that she's vegan. Even as a vegan, like it's hard for me not to assume that demands are being made, because how often do we see family members going out of their way like that to not only provide options, which often we don't even see that, but to change everything so that it's all vegan, not even vegetarian, vegan. It's hard not to assume that the daughter or the husband were not coming unless it's all vegan. But again, that's an assumption and we shouldn't do that. And I don't know. I really appreciate him being so charitable, and this is why he has an advice column, I guess. He seems like a really nice person and a really good listener or reader. And look, I think most vegans are not that demanding. I got so many comments when I talked about, was it a Thanksgiving, am I the asshole kind of thing, where the son wouldn't go unless it was all vegan, that sort of thing. And I got so many comments from people saying, that's crazy. I still go to family functions, even if there's meat there. Like, I'm not going to miss out on my family time, on traditions, all of that stuff. So yeah, I think most vegans and vegetarians would not demand their mother have only vegan foods at every event. Anyway, that was just a nice little thing I wanted to share. Bye.